Welcome to channel Unveiling Mysteries. Losing her virginity at 12, becoming a bed slave for an old man at 19, working the streets in the red light district at 22, and publishing a book globally at 36. It's hard to imagine that this is the daughter of hero Tendo, the leader of the Yamaguchi-gumi Yakuza gang, which dominates Japan with immense power. Why did this young woman have to endure such things? Welcome back, dear viewers. Please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive exciting daily videos. In 1968, Shoko Tendo was born in Osaka, Japan. Her father was the leader of a notorious crime syndicate, managing a large group of subordinates, and he also ran several real estate and finance companies. Unlike other gangster families, the atmosphere in Shoko's home was very warm. Shoko's family consisted of 4 people: her mother, a traditional, obedient, and fragile Japanese woman, her older sister, and an incredibly powerful father. Despite being a gangster, Shoko's father always maintained a respectable facade, never showing his true nature when at home. Every day, he would return on time to eat dinner with his family, and on weekends, he would take them on outings. Even though they had a nanny to look after the children, the boss, with his tattoos, still tried to do some things himself for his daughters. Under the love of her parents, the girl grew up enjoying privileges that ordinary people didn't. In her eyes, her gangster father was always gentle, almost unrelated to the Yakuza world. But when Shoko was 8 years old, she accidentally witnessed a horrifying scene. She saw her father acting incredibly aggressive, while his subordinates knelt to report their work, apologizing profusely and trying to cut off their own pinky fingers. The little girl rushed into her mother's arms. Although she tried to forget, her father's anger and the bloody images kept lingering in her mind. After that incident, Shoko truly understood what her father, who was called the boss, really did for a living. But she wasn't scared. Instead, because there were so many subordinates and her father could easily control other people's lives, she admired him even more. Not long after, Shoko Tendo was admitted to an elementary school. On her admission report, she was very proud of her father's profession. In the fearful eyes of her friends and teachers, this transformed into admiration. Having a notorious father, Sendo was very proud to be the daughter of Yakuza boss Hiro Tendo. So at school, she would walk around defiantly, and no one dared to oppose her. At the same time, no one truly dared to befriend this child because her family was too dangerous. Not long after, her princess-like life came to an end when her father was imprisoned. Without her father's protection, Shoko Tendo, her mother, and her sister began to face malice from all directions. A trusted subordinate of boss Hiro Tendo repeatedly came to their house, using the excuse of a shared gang fund to demand money, forcing her mother to hand over all their savings. Shoko Tendo looked back at a past where she stood at the top, yet now she had to hide behind her mother, watching her father's uncles and subordinates cause trouble. Shoko's time at school was also not good. Previously, due to her solid backing, everyone looked up to her, and even when wronged, no one dared to speak out. Now that the ship had sunk, the girl immediately became a target for bullying and ridicule. She was even bullied at school. Some people, when she wasn't looking, would throw her jacket and gym shoes into a fire. When it came to cleaning, they would intentionally assign Shoko the dirtiest and most exhausting tasks, calling her a prisoner's daughter. At first, Shoko Tendo would complain to the teachers, hoping they could help her find justice. But facing a student with a Yakuza background, the teachers also had prejudices and turned a blind eye to the bullying from other students. Shoko felt lonely but didn't want to tell her mother and burden her further. She could only silently endure it all, counting the days until her father was released from prison to rescue his daughter from this sea of suffering. Finally, when Shoko was in 4th grade, her father was granted early release for good behavior. That day, Shoko was filled with joy to see her father again. However, she was suddenly stunned. After 3 years in prison, her idolized father had become lazy, a changed middle-aged man. After his release, Hiroyasu Tendo completely transformed. He no longer cared about his career, spending all day incessantly drinking alcohol. Every day, different women would bring her drunken father home. After her traditionally Japanese mother bowed in thanks, she would still have to endure her father's punches. Shoko tried to stop her father, but each time, he would only get angrier, and she herself would also be beaten. Over time, Shoko Tendo accumulated more and more resentment in her heart. She hated the teachers and her classmates, hated her changed father, and hated her own weakness and incompetence. She thought, if only she could be as strong as her father used to be, then no one would dare to bully her and her mother. It wasn't until Shoko Tendo was 12 years old and attending junior high school that she went with her older sister. Her sister put on makeup and took her to a nightclub. In the dim light, all the men and women there were stimulated by the music, alcohol, and drugs, soaring madly throughout the night. Seeing her sister surrounded by a crowd of men, being flattered, this reminded Shoko of her father, who once commanded respect in her memory. It was exactly after that night that she began to imitate them, dressing in a playboy style for school. Gradually, Shoko learned to smoke and drink, and even found some friends to form her own small gang called the Black Wind Girls Group. Shoko began to take revenge on those who had bullied her at school. Very soon after, the notorious reputation of the bad girl spread widely, and everyone bowed their heads when they saw her. After experiencing the fear of others towards her, Shoko Tendo felt completely exhilarated by this feeling. She became increasingly arrogant. Reckless driving, smoking, and sleeping with men all became habits for this girl. Although after her father discovered what his daughter was doing, he would beat her again and again, reminding her to stay away from those thugs. Shoko Tendo felt that her father had lost his former pride and become a coward. So, she constantly sought attention by rebelling, unable to free herself. Tendo sank deeper and deeper into the mire until her 3rd year of high school, when she was sent to an 8-month reformatory due to her involvement in a large brawl. That was Shoko's rare moment of peace in years. Finally, she was released early for good behavior. After her freedom, the police even helped her obtain a junior high school diploma, hoping to help her turn her life around. Shoko's older sister was also very remorseful after her younger sister went to prison. Because she had led her sister down this path, she had almost ruined Shoko's life. The older sister decided to cut off all contact with her bad friends, working at home and waiting for her sister to return. When Shoko was released, her sister helped her apply to a military-managed boarding school, wanting her sister to restart her education and live a healthy life. Shoko Tendo understood her sister's good intentions, so she didn't object. Under strict management, Shoko gradually gave up her bad habits and cut off contact with her former thuggish friends. Even on weekends when she could go home, the young girl would only stay in her room reading books. Seeing his daughter heading in the right direction and becoming diligent, Shoko's father was also moved and returned to his old business, determined to work hard. If Shoko's family had truly returned to a happy life, you wouldn't be hearing this story from me. At that point, fate began to play tricks on them again. When Shoko Tendo was 18, many upheavals occurred. Her father, Hiroyasu Tendo, due to years of heavy drinking, contracted a serious illness that required a large sum of money to save his life. His trusted friend also betrayed him, absconding with money, and leaving the former Yakuza boss with enormous debt. Added to this, the Japanese economy was gradually declining. After these setbacks, Shoko's father could no longer cope and was unable to repay his debts. The debt grew like a bottomless pit, continually expanding. Their family's biggest creditor was a man named Maima, a man over 50. He sent people to collect the debt. Eventually, when they received no money, they took their house. The family was forced to live in a dilapidated slum. A sick father, a weak mother who could do nothing but lie there sighing. The father's debt grew ever larger. Shoko's older sister was so utterly disappointed in her parents that one night she secretly packed her bags and fled, leaving a huge debt on her younger sister's shoulders. After her sister left, Shoko continued to attend school, studying for her university entrance exams as planned. She had the potential to be accepted into her desired university. But what she didn't realize was that the problems at home would shatter her dream of higher education like a soap bubble. The debt collectors continued to harass them. At that time, the creditor was still Maima. He stared at Shoko, and an evil thought arose in his mind. He proposed that the young girl become his mistress to pay off the debt. Of course, Shoko's father disagreed, but not long after, a group of thugs dragged the girl out of the school gate, then drugged her, and from that point, 19-year-old Shoko Tendo was sexually assaulted. Although Shoko woke up and resisted strongly, all she got in return was a beating, and she almost died in that dilapidated motel. Afterward, the old creditor asked her if she wanted to go with him. Shoko Tendo secretly thought that since things had already come to this, and she couldn't escape their clutches anyway, then why not agree to his demand? At least she could help her father pay off the debt. And so Shoko stopped her studies and became this old man's bed slave. From then on, every day the young girl faced beatings, suffering severe injuries multiple times, and having to go to the hospital for treatment. To satisfy his perverted psychology, the creditor forced Shoko to inject illegal substances, ensuring that Shoko would never be able to leave him. This humiliating life lasted for 3 years. At this point, Shoko Tendo had become deeply entrenched, a bed slave and a slave to illegal substances. Just when she thought her life was ruined, Maima suddenly died of an overdose of illegal substances. Shoko's days in hell finally came to an end. However, even though the old man was dead, the consequences he left behind were still immense. After years of being addicted to illegal substances, Shoko couldn't return to a normal life. Since he was dead, no one could provide her with free drugs. Shoko Tendo no longer had the face to go to her sister to borrow money, nor did she want to see her parents. She herself had no skills, and even eating became a big problem. In despair, Shoko thought of selling her body. That was the only thing she could do and the fastest way to earn money, just like that. Having escaped the wolf's mouth, the young girl led herself into a new den. Shoko went to bars, drank, and slept with different old men. This life disgusted her, but it was the only way for her to survive. Fortunately, Shoko's fate quickly changed when she met the man of her life. That day, as Shoko was looking for a target at the bar with her beautiful appearance, a man struck up a conversation with her. Seeing that the other person was wearing expensive clothes, she immediately happily chatted with him. During their conversation, she learned that his name was Taka Kamisu, and he was also a member of a gang. He was even the second in command of the gang. Perhaps Taka Kamisu's background made Shoko feel a special closeness. What surprised her was that after hearing about her past, this man not only showed no disdain, but genuinely felt compassion for her. That night, nothing happened between the two of them. They just drank and talked until dawn. After that day, Taka Kamisu frequently sought out Shoko, saying he wanted to pursue her. Having been used to being treated like a plaything, Shoko felt respected for the first time and thought that perhaps heaven was giving her another chance at life. So, she resolved to start anew and live more positively. She stopped going to bars and was determined to quit illegal substances. The days of withdrawal were agonizing. It was like having ants crawling all over her when the cravings hit, and she couldn't sleep all night. Shoko lived each day in hallucinations and pain. When she truly couldn't bear it, Shoko would ask her boyfriend to tie her up. Half a year later, with her boyfriend constantly by her side, Shoko Tendo finally succeeded in overcoming her addiction. This girl also moved Taka Kamisu, who decided to leave the gang, marry Shoko, and live a normal life. The two decided to start their lives over. After discussing it, the couple moved to Yokohama and opened an izakaya restaurant there. If you don't know, an izakaya is an intimate type of bar that serves alcoholic drinks and snacks, a casual place where anyone can go. Returning to a normal life was not as easy as they thought. Both had to work day and night. Meanwhile, in Osaka, Shoko's mother suffered a stroke. Even though this girl harbored much resentment towards her parents, she couldn't abandon the hidden affection in her heart. So she rushed back to spend her final moments with her mother. Shoko then took her elderly father to her sister's house, and the two decided to pool their resources to care for their father. But during this time, the restaurant was not doing well. Basically, it couldn't sustain itself any longer. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn, enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat. Therefore, Shoko and her husband decided to leave Yokohama. After arriving in Tokyo, the young couple's life was also very difficult. They both worked over 10 hours a day, and on top of that, they had to pay for their father's support, so they barely saved any money. What Shoko didn't expect was to receive a call from her older sister asking to borrow money. Although her sister's family wasn't extremely wealthy, they weren't in a position where they had to borrow money to live. When Shoko asked for the full story, she learned that the reason was her brother-in-law's gambling addiction, which had wiped out all of her sister's savings. Not only that, but her brother-in-law had also taken out large, high-interest loans. The memory of being pushed to the brink of death by creditors flooded Shoko's mind. She swore she wouldn't let her sister suffer as she had. Her husband also felt great sympathy and suggested sending all of their savings to her sister to pay off the debt. With the efforts of many, the brother-in-law's gambling debts were finally paid off. But old habits die hard. Less than a month later, more creditors came knocking. Her brother-in-law's gambling addiction was incurable. Her sister, seeing him at his lowest point, wanted to help him and didn't want a divorce. Shoko couldn't help but care for her sister's family. But gambling debt is always a bottomless money pit. After a few days of thought, her sister made the decision not to affect her family members and filed for divorce. Although Shoko's husband seemed not to care too much, both had tried to persevere until today, but in the end, they were forced to separate. After the divorce, Shoko worked day and night, partly to earn money to help her sister, and partly to forget the misfortunes of her life. After helping her sister, Shoko Tendo's life continued to fall into a maze because she received news that her father had terminal cancer. He didn't want to be a burden to his two daughters, and refused all treatment, no matter who tried to persuade him. In 1997, on that day, the 29-year-old girl went to the hospital to see her father for the last time. Before taking his final breath, the former Yakuza boss whispered to his daughter that he wished for her to have a healthy and good life. Even if the preceding decades had been ruined, He advised her not to give up on her future life. Her father's last words brought Shoko Tendo to tears. She was stuck in the pain of losing her father. A few years later, she lived like a walking corpse. Worse still, she received a suicide letter from her sister. Unable to bear this cruel life, her sister had decided to end her own life. But in the letter, she urged Shoko Tendo to live on, carrying her hope to live a better life. Her only remaining family member had also left Shoko, but carrying the hopes of her father and sister, Shoko, like a cockroach that refuses to die after being stepped on, resolved to stand up once more. She took her meager savings and returned to her hometown to settle down. Walking through the desolate fields in those lonely days, Shoko Tendo recalled the past decades of her life. She decided to write about these difficult experiences, using them to warn the next generation, those who might face similar troubles. However, since Shoko had dropped out of school early, her literary skills weren't very good. To achieve her goal, Shoko spent 2 years diligently practicing. Based on her real-life experiences, she finally wrote a novel. Initially, the book's sales weren't high, and Shoko thought that probably not many people would want to read her book. Thus, in 2004, only 1,000 copies of Yakuza Moon, her memoir as the daughter of a crime boss, were released. But what she didn't expect was that this book caused a sensation in Japan. Sales gradually increased exponentially, exceeding 100,000 copies, and then it became a bestseller in the West as well. When the novel became a bestseller, Tendo became a hot topic in Japan. Collaborations, signing events, and interviews followed one after another, and she attracted a large fan base. Additionally, Shoko Tendo earned a lot of money after becoming a writer. Finally, she lived the normal life she had always dreamed of. She began to find joy in life, like a handbag, a cat, a gift from a fan. All became sources of her happiness. Having experienced life in a Yakuza family, becoming a plaything for men, Shoko Tendo was once dragged to the abyss. Finally, she was reborn at the age of 36, and thanks to her resilient vitality, she stood under the sunlight once more. Life is too fleeting. If fate forces us to go through some terrible things, we hope we can create new life in the darkness. If you are unhappy and stuck in the mire of life right now, remember to persevere a little longer. Perhaps that very perseverance will lead us to good things. Don't forget to subscribe to the Unveiling Mysteries channel to always receive the latest videos that help you achieve success in life. Thank you for following and accompanying the channel.